Is Steve Harvey's own daughter really putting him on blast for being a hypocrite? So now people are saying Brandi Harvey is fed up, completely over it, and tired of watching her dad treat Marjorie's kids like royalty while his biological kids get pushed to the side. And she's allegedly dropping some seriously juicy Harvey family secrets that have everyone talking, because the image Steve shows on TV might not match what's happening at home. Now sure, Marjorie is always going to say he's the perfect husband, and Lori is definitely going to say he's the best dad to her. But when it comes to Steve's biological kids, that Father of the Year title doesn't seem to fit the same way at all. And that contrast is what's raising eyebrows everywhere, because how can one man play two completely different roles depending on who's around? Everyone knows Steve loves giving advice, especially about relationships and family. Drama, like he's got all the answers figured out. But when it comes to his own household, things start looking messy real fast. There's tension between his 4 biological kids, his adopted kids, and his marriage with Marjorie. And it's not something you can just ignore. His biological kids reportedly feel like he clearly favors Marjorie and her children, and the craziest part is, he doesn't even try to hide it. What really gets people talking is the claim that Steve hasn't done much to fix the situation, even though this drama has been bubbling for years. According to sources, the divide hasn't been addressed in a real way, and that's left some of his kids feeling overlooked and frustrated. And then there's Lori, who seems to be front and center all the time, getting the spotlight, the praise, and the attention, while the others feel like they're stuck fighting for whatever is left. Now, to be fair, people do say Steve stepped up by adopting Marjorie's kids and treating them with love, which is something many respect. But that doesn't erase the tension inside the blended family, because there's still talk of jealousy and competition, especially when it comes to Lori being the most visible and talked about. Her high-profile life keeps her in the spotlight, and that only adds more pressure behind the scenes. You don't have to be part of the Harvey family to notice what's going on, because anyone paying attention can see there's a clear difference in how Steve interacts with Lori compared to his other kids. He mentions her more, supports her more publicly, and gives her a level of attention that stands out. And that's exactly why people keep questioning what's really happening behind closed doors. It's actually wild how easy it is to forget Steve even has other kids besides Lori, and that alone says a lot. The spotlight stays on her so heavy that the rest barely get mentioned. And people are starting to question why that keeps happening. Now yeah, the favoritism toward Lori is already raising eyebrows, but that's not even the full story because there's way more going on behind the scenes. People have been saying Marjorie has a strong influence over Steve's decisions, like she's the one calling the shots in a lot of situations. And to be fair, Steve stepping up to adopt her kids and love them like his own is something many respect, because not everyone would do that. But here's where things start to get messy. The issue isn't that he loves Marjorie's kids, it's that his biological kids reportedly don't feel that same energy from him at all. In fact, there's talk that they believe he doesn't show them even half the love he shows Marjorie and her children, and some even think Marjorie plays a role in that distance. And it doesn't stop there, because the history between Steve and his biological kids adds another layer to all of this. Reports say he was absent for a big part of their childhood, which left a lasting impact. His son Broderick has even shared that he didn't really have a relationship with Steve until he was 16, which is shocking when you think about it. That's right before adulthood, after missing years that really matter. As surprising as that sounds, some believe Broderick's experience wasn't even the most difficult situation in the family. Steve's other biological son, Winton, grew up during a very tense period between Steve and his second wife, Mary, and that divorce brought a lot of conflict with it. According to claims that have circulated, Mary raised serious concerns about how Winton was treated during visits with Steve. She alleged that there were moments where discipline may have crossed the line, describing incidents that sounded intense and upsetting. These claims included accusations of physical punishment that she felt went too far, and she even said there were times Winton came back home visibly hurt, which raised alarms for her. Now, people will always debate discipline and how strict parenting should be, and that conversation can get heated fast. But there's a clear line between discipline and harm, and that's exactly what made these allegations so serious. Mary reportedly contacted authorities and documented what she believed was happening, but in the end, Steve was not found legally responsible for wrongdoing in that situation. All of this just adds more layers to the tension inside the Harvey family, because it's not just about favoritism anymore. It's about years of complicated history, unresolved feelings, and claims that still have people talking today. And get this, things reportedly got even tighter behind the scenes because Mary was said to be legally restricted from speaking publicly about Steve after their split. That only made people more curious about what really happened, because when someone goes quiet like that, it raises even more questions. Now, when you look at Steve's relationship with his twin daughters, Carly and Brandi, it doesn't exactly clear things up either. Reports suggest he was distant for a long time and didn't stay very involved in their day-to-day lives, especially after divorcing their mom while they were still young. That kind of distance doesn't just disappear, it sticks with people, but at the same time, people noticed a completely different energy when it came to Marjorie's kids. Steve appeared much more present, more active, and way more hands-on. He was even known for taking Lori out on father-daughter outings, having real conversations about life, dating, and relationships, which stood out because that kind of bonding wasn't something people recall him doing with his biological daughters. And look, it's great that Lori had that support, especially if she needed a strong father figure in her life. But the real issue people keep pointing out is the imbalance, because many feel his own kids should have received that same level of attention too. Now here's where the story takes another turn, because some of Steve's kids, especially Brandi, are believed to think Marjorie had a strong influence over how everything played out. There's a narrative going around that she may have shaped decisions in a way that created even more distance between Steve and his biological children, and that idea keeps popping up in conversations. For those who don't know the backstory, Steve and Marjorie actually met years before everything came together, back when he was still building his career. They didn't move forward at the time, and life took them in different directions before eventually reconnecting later on. During that time apart, Marjorie had her own relationships and life experiences, which have been widely discussed online over the years. Some of those stories include past marriages and legal scrutiny, involving people she was connected to, though it's important to note that she was not convicted of any wrongdoing in those situations. Eventually, she and Steve found their way back to each other, got married, and blended their families. Steve adopted her children and helped provide a stable life, which many people see as a positive move. But critics argue that while he made sure all his kids were supported financially, the emotional connection didn't feel equal across the board, and people online have not held back when sharing their opinions about it. One person claimed, "I went to college with the twins, and that man did not attend a family day event, not a heritage festival event, not a comedy show, not a football game, basketball game, field hockey or bowling, not a nothing. They were extremely humble and nice. He had nothing to do with that." That kind of statement really adds fuel to the conversation. Another comment said, "That's not his daughter. His real kids were put on the back burner. Marjorie is a hustler, plain and simple, and had he not got his money, this wouldn't even be a conversation." And someone else added, "He could give his biological children all those things, wouldn't take away the hurt of seeing him being devoted to Lori and her mother." Those reactions show just how divided public opinion is when it comes to this situation. All of this keeps the spotlight on the Harvey family dynamics, because the mix of past relationships, blended family challenges, and ongoing claims has people constantly questioning what really went down behind closed doors. And just when you think this situation couldn't get any more intense, people start asking the real question: why hasn't Steve ever fully addressed any of this head-on? He's built a whole career giving advice, calling out behavior, and breaking down family issues for everyone else. But when it comes to his own situation, things go real. Quiet. That silence is exactly what keeps the conversation alive, because the more people feel like something is being avoided, the more they dig and speculate. And with so many stories, claims, and opinions floating around, it creates this image that doesn't quite match the polished version people see on TV. At the same time, there are still plenty of people who defend Steve and say being a provider counts for something, and that blended families come with challenges nobody fully understands from the outside. They argue that stepping in as a father figure to Marjorie's kids while maintaining responsibilities to his biological children isn't as simple as people make it sound. But even with that perspective, the criticism doesn't really slow down, because for many, it's not just about money or appearances, it's about presence, consistency, and emotional connection. And when people feel like those things are uneven, that's when the questions start getting louder. And here's the part that really keeps people locked into this story: the long-term impact on the kids themselves. Because no matter how successful or famous a family looks on the outside, those early experiences don't just disappear. They shape how people see relationships, trust, and even their own self-worth. People watching all of this unfold keep pointing out that when kids feel like they have to compete for a parent's attention, that can leave a mark that lasts for years. And in this case, the conversation keeps circling back to whether that dynamic played a role in how some of Steve's biological kids view him today. At the same time, others argue that families grow, people change, and relationships can improve over time if there's effort on both sides. Not every distant chapter means the story stays that way forever, and some believe there could be more going on behind the scenes that the public just doesn't. See? Still, the contrast in how different kids are perceived publicly continues to spark debate. Lori's spotlight moments, interviews, and public support stand out so much that it naturally leads people to compare, and those comparisons keep the discussion alive. And as long as those differences remain visible, people are going to keep asking questions, picking sides, and trying to figure out what's real and what's just perception. So, at the end of the day, this whole situation leaves people split right down the middle. On one side, you've got those who still respect Steve for what he's built, the career, the image, and the role he's played in a blended family. But on the other side, you've got people who can't ignore the claims, the stories, and the noticeable differences in how his kids have been treated. And that's what makes this hit so hard. Because it's not just about fame or money, it's about family, fairness, and the kind of love that people expect behind closed doors. When those things don't seem to line up, that's when the questions get louder and the spotlight gets even brighter. Whether all of this is misunderstood, exaggerated, or completely real, one thing is clear: people are paying attention now more than ever. And once these conversations start, they don't just disappear, they keep growing, with more voices, more opinions, and more eyes watching every move. So, the real question is this just public perception getting out of control? Or is there more truth to the story than people expected?